We are live tonight with Team Young Earth Creation. I've got Raw Matt here and the legend himself, Jeremy. We're going to have some fun tonight. This is episode 3, guys. We're going to be talking about the human-chimp DNA similarity myth. We're going to prove once and for all that man is made in the image of God. I've got Grandpa here on the screen for the atheists, because this is who they love to praise, that they believe they're related to. So as much as much as we hate and as much as it hurts us to have to shatter their dreams and everything that they know to be true, that's what we're going to do tonight, and it's going to be a success. Raw Matt, you got anything to say, brother?
Not to that photo, but to tear him up, yeah, for sure. Lots of information tonight.
Grandpa, is that you? So what we'll do here, is start it off with the so-called evolutionary claim that human to chimpanzee, genetically speaking, are identical by 98 to 99%. How many times have we heard this? How many times has the layman evolutionist just told this to us as if it was fact, because they've heard it? Because now we know that this supposed genetically identity to apes is based a lot on preferential and selective treatment of data. And this is important too, because, well, later on we're going to get into more specific created kinds as well. But we know people like Aaron Ron, his phylogeny challenge, want us to identify specific created kinds, which we did in our 3-part phylogeny challenge series Debunked, which nobody has even attempted to address, because it's really just irrefutable at the end of the day. And you can go check out that series, as well as the series devoted to Nestlig and Rationale Mind, debunked with no solid critique yet. So we're going to keep these coming, guys. And like I said, this 98 to 99% suggested similarity, it's based on cherry-picked data, because they use sequences that they're going to expect to be similar. It all comes down to an incredible evolutionary bias, which a lot of them don't even realize. Some of them, very few of them, that actually have the guts to admit their bias, but that's few and far between. But what they don't include is non-aligned DNA gaps, copy number variations, and size differences. So the actual genetic identity is really only about 88% or even lower, probably a lot lower. We're just giving it to them at that point. And to put that into perspective, that's over 400 million DNA differences that actually exist between the two species. And it all comes down to the fact that there's very significant DNA sequence discontinuity between the two genomes that, at the end of the day, the evolutionists themselves cannot explain or account for through universal common ancestry. So what is the reality here? Humans are not apes based on the genetic data, the very same genetic data that they want to use. But given that it's cherry-picked, we now know that, man was created separately and uniquely in the image of God. And not only does the Bible prove this, obviously, but so does the DNA evidence. Raw Matt, did you have anything to say, brother?
No, you nailed it, right? I mean, they've stated themselves, even going back to Karl Popper days, that he said that if humans don't match primates more genetically than other species, then common ancestry is falsified. And just like you said, we're down right now to 86.7%. genetic similarity to them. And that's not excluding what they found recently, is that they removed 25% of the human DNA and 18% of the primate DNA. So, but like you said, we're going to give them the 86.7%. And guess what? That still puts mice and rodents, dogs, the typical house cat, and pigs more genetically similar to us. So they've lost common ancestry based on their own admission of words. So they dug their own ditch on that one, man.
Romat, that the 86%, did you include the size difference?
I believe they did. Here's the PubMed study. Let me link it to you.
Because the chimps have a 8% larger genome. So I think 86% is yeah, you're right, too generous. Did you use the word too generous? The 86% is too generous. Actually, if you include the genome side, the fact that chimps have a 8% larger genome, the differences would be 80%. Actually, 80%.
That means cows are higher as well now, because cows have genetic similarity to 80%. So we can add a fifth. Let's just do that, just for fun.
And even what we were talking about before, and maybe Jeremy can elaborate on this a little bit too, the Y chromosome alone, the Y chromosome DNA disproves human evolution, because the significantly different DNA sequence of the Y chromosomes between human and chimps is a very, very fatal and serious problem for common ancestry, because of the differences between the Y chromosome of humans and of the great apes. So that fact in and of itself is extremely powerful evidence as well against the primary axiom of human evolution. So I mean, that's just, you know, a cherry on the top against their so-called human ape ancestry.
Yes, the human and chimp Y chromosome, actually, when you compare them side by side using what we call a chromosomal synthetic arrangement, that is actually the first level of how you look at the similarity between, okay, that's the first level, and then the next level is the gene level, the genes itself. So the chromosomal synthetic arrangements is the first level. And even at that first level, when you look at it, between human and chimp Y chromosomes, it doesn't line up with evolutionary prediction that we should share lots of similarities between human and chimp Y chromosome. This data supports the fact that this is the first level, right? The second level is the gene level, the nucleotide level, the letter by letter comparison. And when you do that, it doesn't conflict with the synthetic arrangement. It fits, because at the gene level, it's only 70% similar. Okay, and this 70% similarity is what you would expect between a human and the species that is far from the human line in the evolutionary tree. Chicken, for example, that's the similarity you would expect, not between humans and ape. So as you can see, the first level and the second level of these comparisons reveal that they are clearly very different. Both the synthetic level and the gene level. That's it.
Exactly right. And another thing that can we can add as well in the genetic realm to kind of demonstrate uniquely created kinds would be that of the presence of orphan genes, because in the context of our worldview of engineered and intelligent design, of course, and the concept of created kinds, as we're talking about, and as is described in the book of Genesis, orphan genes would be better explained under a biblical based model if there were original created kinds, because these orphan genes have no ancestral sequences that they evolved from. And the only explanation that evolutionists would have would be that of a circular argument. So at the end of the day, de novo gene synthesis, you know, that as a rescue device is circular. So orphan genes as well, which are you know, unique genes that are taxonomically restricted, and the certain orphan genes that are specific to humans. That's just another very powerful evidence against the idea that we actually evolved from apes. So that's conclusive evidence that man is made in the image of God. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Some evolutionists might say that orphan genes are not enough. So how many percent of orphan genes does your data show? If you know. I actually forgot the exact number too. So do you have it? How many percent of the DNA has orphan genes?
I think it's let me see. I'd have to pull up a slide on that, but I think that's specifically why it's orphan genes, Y chromosome, you know, human to ape, similarity, discontinuity. It's all of it combined, right? So we don't just have one or two. We've got many that actually correlate perfectly with the idea that man was made separately and in the image of God. But the actual percentage of orphan genes themselves in humans, I'd have to look at it, unless someone has the number on that.
I would like to make a correlation. I don't know if correlation is the correct English. Because orphan genes are also like the conserved genes or the conserved regions in DNA, which evolutionists didn't predict. Remember, they predicted over 90% conserved regions given evolutionary history. So these conserved regions contain unique set of genes also. Okay, these conserved regions gives us a hint that the overall number of orphan genes. Sorry, I know the number of the orphan genes. I just forgot. I forgot the paper which wrote the number. But when you correlate this to the overall conserved regions of DNA, which is only 50%. Okay, evolutionists predict 90%. So when you correlate this to the 50% conserved regions of DNA, we can have a good bet that there are over 30 to 40% orphan genes in the DNA, because they are almost the same with those conserved regions. Those conserved sorry, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Sorry, those conserved regions are 50%, and the non-conserved regions in the DNA are also 50%. So those non-conserved regions, those orphan genes are also over there. Those orphan genes are over there. And since the conserved regions have already given us a clue that these sequences didn't evolve, only 50% of the conserved regions have evolved, and which can be used as evolutionary argument if they want, and they did. Since these other 50% are unique set of genes, then the orphan genes are also there, and gives us a clue that there are over 30 to 40% orphan genes in those conserved regions, and that is a lot. Did you guys understand? Any question?
No, absolutely. The conserved regions, as you were talking about, would be, I think it all comes down to the correlation of it all, as you were talking about, right, Jeremy?
There could be orphan genes in the non-conserved, in the conserved. Sorry, I really get confused with conserved and non-conserved. If I could speak Chinese here, I'll do it. There will be orphan genes too in the in both regions. There will be. Okay, we haven't sequenced everything enough yet, We haven't checked everything enough yet. But more of orphan genes are expected to be found. And I know that I just forgot the paper. Sorry, to be found in the non-conserved regions, because the non-conserved regions contain unique set of genes, completely unique. Okay, you won't found these specific A's, B, C, the organizations of those nucleotides in the conserved regions. You won't find them there. So orphan genes are obviously in the the non-conserved regions. Okay, and when you look at those conserved regions, they fit with what you would expect from orphan genes also, because non-conserved regions contain they contain call that again, unique sequences. And as we know, orphan genes are also unique, right? So as you can see, they correspond. Not sure if correspond is the correct English. They fit.
Yeah.
That's my point. Yes. So 50% conserved. Okay, and you would expect those orphan genes to be there also. Do you understand? Do you have a question?
No, I think it comes down.
But there will also be orphan genes. It's worse for evolutionists if the non-conserved regions. Sorry. We also expect some orphan genes. It will be worse for evolutionists if orphan genes are found in those conserved regions, because
Right.
the conserved regions is their evidence, right? That's the
Exactly.
50% of the genome. That's the 50%. So if orphan genes are also found there, their problem gets deeper. And I know it's already found there.
And what was the evolutionist prediction in
90%.
regards to the conserved? Yeah, and that's a flawed and wrong prediction as well from them.
They had to predict 90% above conserved regions, because for example, the human and chimp DNA similarities, they say, are 98%. Okay, so the prediction of their conserved regions in DNA should also match up with their, or at least be close to their prediction of the human-chimp DNA similarity. So that's why it was a huge shocker when they found out that only 50% of our DNA is conserved. So if only 50% of our DNA is conserved, I mean, what? How many hundreds of millions of years does it remove from the evolutionary timeline? I mean, well, I have the numbers, but how can I do the numbers here? So yeah, something like that.
Well, why do you think? Well, Jeremy, let me ask you, why do you think these atheists, especially these militant atheists, why do they want to be related to monkeys and apes so bad? You know, what is it, do you think?
That's not a scientific question.
No, but I'm curious at your opinion. Is it because they just want to be related to Grandpa Ape, or like, what do you think it is?
Well, I'm a former atheist. I wanted atheism to be true badly, because I wanted to hate people. I wanted to hurt people. So I wanted atheism to be true, because if there's no God, then I can be the God of myself.
Right. Good point.
Yes.
Because
And
they only answer to themselves.
yeah, I want atheist, and I also hate Christians in the past. I hate them so much that I was so biased that I simply just wanted atheism to be true.
A lot of it comes down to the fact that they want to be the god of their own world. And then at the end of the day, morality becomes subjective. And people like Stalin, people like Mao Zedong, people like Pol Pot, who have killed and murdered millions, Margaret Sanger, you know, these people, according to the evolutionists who believe they're related to monkeys, they're just going to get away with it all. You know, there's no justice, and that's what disturbs me the most about it all. And someone like
Actually,
Stalin lived till a long age. You know what I mean? He died in his, I can't remember how old he was, but yeah. Go ahead, Jeremy. What were you going to say?
Stalin actually died in pain, tremendous pain. So you don't have to. So that's something to celebrate about. Well, that's a bad attitude to say, since I am what atheists consider a Christian. So
Well,
well,
when you got
he
somebody like
suffered.
Stalin who hates the Lord, and you got somebody like King David who says, "Do not I hate them that hate the Lord. I hate them with a perfect hatred." So when you got someone like Stalin who's murdering millions, I don't think it's wrong at all to
And
want to see justice.
Stalin's anger towards religion actually was fueled by the death of his first wife. After actually he said this after the death of his first wife. He said that not the exact words. The death of my first wife also means the end of my warm feelings towards people. That's what he said.
Yeah, a lot of people blame God for when things go bad.
Well, that's exactly what it is. But no, those are some good points. I appreciate your answer there, Jeremy. I think when we just bring it right back to task. At the end of the day, our genome is now being shown to be incredibly functional, complex, and engineered beyond our wildest dreams. So, for example, these orphan genes that we were talking about are especially expected and necessary for the uniqueness associated with each created kind that we know is described in say the book of Genesis as well. And Matt, I wanted to bring it to you because you had some good points to make on about the similarity between humans and say chimps, for example, versus say humans and mice. Can you elaborate on that, brother?
Yeah, one of the most recent studies is the Rockefeller University study that revealed and has already proven that they've taken the animal genomes from 100,000 different species. Multiple different scientists don't have the same laboratory, and they started unraveling the genome of these things, and they noticed clear distinctions between different species. And when they tracked them back to see where they arose, it was all at the same time, all of them, including humans. And so what they did is they, of course, invoked the bottleneck because it's a wonderful excuse. You can just throw that word out there and now everything's provable because they go, well, it must have happened. Unfortunately for them, they don't have anything in their fossil record to prove that. So we have an example now with science that actually proved that these life forms from 100,000 different species all arose at the same time. So now people really can't complain that we don't have any proof of this because we actually do from their own scientists, not some creationist scientist who just came up with a theory, but actual evolutionary scientists. Matter of fact, they even state they fought against it as hard as they could. So
Let us not forget that the population bottleneck, ROMAT, was originally predicted by creationists. It's right there all along. Some scientific papers before the population bottleneck before the population bottleneck admission by evolutionists. There are some creationist papers who already wrote about it, and those creationist paper said, because of course they will be asked where do they get the idea of a population bottleneck. Well, those creationists would answer simple. It's from the Bible. There was a global flood. We expect a population bottleneck. And they were ignored for many years. But later on, evolutionists were forced to admit a population bottleneck. One reason is because we found out we are all very genetically similar. Okay? If there are millions of years of evolution with millions of ancestors, sorry, we would expect tons and tons and tons of genetic differences. So the rescuing device is to copy the creationist population bottleneck. But of course, since they cannot accept we came from just two people, they have to come up with something else. And there goes their population restart of 10,000 to 100,000 individuals in the past. So creationists predicted it first.
Well, it's funny.
Okay.
We predicted it first, and everything in genetics confirmed right. I mean, just like you were saying. I mean, all humans. I mean, there's only one race, the human race, and we're all what 0.5% different than each other. We see low genetic diversity, which points us right back to Adam and Eve. We know, one Y chromosome, one mitochondrial DNA plus 3 major mitochondrial DNA haplogroups. It's just all consistent with a literal interpretation of Genesis. And just like you said, they got to resort to a bottleneck. They need to resort to rescue devices.
Yes, and those rescuing devices require certain evolutionary assumptions, which I've already discussed in your past videos, like their common ancestry and so on. So it means that their rescuing devices are so weak that they have to assume evolution to prove their own rescuing device. Okay? They cannot do it neutrally.
No, they can't. They need to assume.
Yes, they need to assume evolution to prove evolution.
And that's why they'll never actually, question the theory when contradictory evidence is presented to them. They'll just automatically, as you said, resort to another rescue device. But you know what? We're not gonna fall for that, because even Noah's flood predictions, as you're talking about, right? All people are closely related. Only a few mitochondrial DNA lines, the one Y chromosome line, and evidence of rapid population growth, plus the DNA variants themselves, right? There's only, after these subgroups migrated from Babel, you'd get a few, rare gene variants in different people groups, but that would be expected under the model of the Babel dispersion, right, Jeremy?
Yes, and there are a lot more things about the genetic side. Let me go back to the human common ancestry thing, which I didn't finish a while ago. There are cases where they infer common ancestry. There are some cases where they based their common ancestry genetic marker tree on just one DNA letter. Okay. There are cases where they infer common ancestry based on just one DNA letter similarity on a particular DNA sequence. That is how deep and how they cherry pick data. Humans, chimpanzee, and the orangutan, for example, they will find if these 3 species, for example, in their model, share a common ancestor, the mutation occurred in their shared ancestral population become more common within the population over time. Okay, eventually become the only version of that gene or letter in the population, and then later it's inherited by the branching population. Okay, the human, orangutan, and chimp are the branching population from gorilla, then went on to become present-day humans. Okay, that's their argument. And because they believe in evolution so much, they are willing to use clearly cherry-picked data by inferring common ancestry based on just one letter differences. And those examples, the human-chimp gorilla, human-chimp orangutan thing, these 3, some of their evidence on these relatedness are based on just one single letter, one single deletion, for example, of that letter. So that's how cherry-picked their data are.
And what was that? I'm not sure. I think you touched on it slightly, Matt. But the fatal blow, like as in, how are they gonna, I guess, combat or rebut the evidence that humans are almost more similar to, you know, certain other animal species than actual monkeys themselves? You were talking about that with Ken Hovind in our interview.
Yeah, yeah, they're really just going to have to go around that one. They have no excuse because it's their own evolutionary prediction that they falsified by doing that. You know, so they really don't have much. Like you said, they'll just use another rescuing device because it's all they can do.
Well, that's all they can do is right. I think to move ourselves back to the genetic side of things, even with their supposed human chromosome 2 fusion number 2 that they say arose through a fusion of two ape-like ancestors. For one, that's a fallacious argument anyways, even if there was a fusion event, because that fusion event, even according to them and their pet theory, would have happened in the human line. So it wouldn't be direct evidence, it would be indirect evidence. But regardless, the genetic data is refuting a chromosomal 2 fusion. And this alleged site, you know, where the fusion actually supposedly took place, represents a highly organized functional gene. So this human chromosome 2 fusion it fits all within the junk DNA paradigm, and we now know that junk DNA is dead, and it's a failed prediction because there's also significant lack of evidence for this cryptic centromere site. But the fact that the alleged site where the fusion actually represents a highly organized functional gene refutes the notion that there was a fusion event. So all genetic evidence in and of itself refutes any idea of human ape ancestry. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
I think your explanation on the fusion is incomplete.
Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, can I complete it?
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yes. Sorry, I slipped my mind. Wait. Okay. This is one of the best evidence that evolutionists use in DNA. This is the fusion between the human and chimp chromosome to prove human evolution. But we found out that the telomere sequence in the DNA, actually these telomeres prevent fusion. Okay, it is like God is trying to prevent evolution. He designed things not to evolve, in a way. When you look at this telomere sequence that actually prevent this fusion. Okay, but they use this telomere after all as evidence for this fusion, and also they're also wondering why there aren't enough telomeres. There should be more telomeres. Okay, if this fusion is true, but there aren't enough telomeres. One more thing. How could the gene span the fusion site? Okay, seeing one part of it here in this this chromosome, and another from one side to another. It's so how could the gene span the fusion site? Because, okay, sorry, I didn't explain first. Because same genes are always found on one chromosome, correct? Okay, so seeing the same genes from one chromosome to another, okay, if they fused, is unrealistic. But that's what we observe near the fusion site. Okay, so that means this alleged fusion is not a fusion after all, because there are the same genes on both these chromosomes. Okay, you can look at it in two ways. Okay, if you assume evolution, you look at the middle, the telomere fusion, okay. But if you assume creation, you can look at the genes. They are so similar that they don't look like a fusion. So which is it? Okay. And one more thing. What else? I know there are three more evidence against this. I just forgot. Yeah. Telomeres don't occur at the middle of genes.
Nope.
Okay.
Padding on
They,
the
they,
chromosome.
yes, they're only found at the rear ends, correct, Romat?
Yes, and they're padding
Yeah.
on each chromosome to protect it.
Yes. So they don't occur at the middle of genes. They're usually at the rear ends only. But this is another problem. So what else? I think that's enough for now.
I think they found that the actual supposed fusion site, that they're highly functional, highly organized DNA elements in the human gene. This lead fusion site also contains functional genetic features called transcription factor binding data, and it's not good because this location is the first non-coding region of a gene. So,
yeah. Sorry,
no,
you're done.
Yeah.
Plus, everybody knows that this fusion is highly unlikely. Okay, for example, why it's highly unlikely is because the telomere sequences prevent fusion. Old Earth creationists like Hugh Ross even said that this fusion is so highly unlikely that if it is really a fusion site, then God must have fused it because it is so unlikely. Only God can do it. That's basically Dr. Hugh Ross' point. Okay, so I see 6 to 7, let's say 5 evidence for non-fusion, 1 evidence for fusion. That's how I see it objectively. Even as an evolutionist, I already noticed this.
And just like you said, it's almost as if God is trying to prevent this type of evolution from happening because these telomeres contain highly specialized end caps that protect them from the fusion. So just like you said, it's as if God is doing everything he can to prevent that from being true. And then someone like Hugh Ross would say it's so unlikely and so rare that God had to do it. So and
telomeres are so important. Telomeres are when you get into longevity, you find that when telomeres shorten throughout our life, the more prone we come to disease. If you want to extend your life, they have astragaloside 65, which extends. They have C60, which extends the telomeres. They have all these things now that are coming out so we can hopefully extend the telomeres to extend our life. Now all of a sudden, a telomere is just going to lose one of its paddings, one of its protective paddings, just so it can fuse. There's no way. That's very damaging to us. Very dangerous if that were to happen. Telomeres are very important.
Well, exactly right. And you know what? That, just like Jeremy said, is one of their more claimed strongest evidences. And that alone.
Yeah, and that telomere to prevent fusion is not only the evidence that we find in our body that seems to look like they're trying to prevent evolution. There are some molecular machines in our body also that limits the change that a protein can make. So there are limits to changes that a protein can make of itself. So forgot which one that is again.
And I think normally that this type of fusion would have to involve a sequence. It's a specific category of sequence called the satellite DNA, which this one is severely lacking.
Sorry, the what? What
satellite DNA?
What is that?
Well, if in all known documented known chromosome fusions in living animals involve a specific category of sequence called satellite DNA.
Maybe where did you get that term? I think it's I use a different term for that. Yeah, I mean, I use a different. They must have used a different term to describe one thing.
Right, and the thing is, um, with that evidence, I think it all falls in line with the fact that junk DNA is dead. We only understand probably less than 5% of the actual DNA language. Even these shared genetic mistakes, pseudogenes that are found, or that are shared among humans and apes. I think that all falls in line with the chromosomal 2 fusion as well, being that it represents, or it's the site where it took place represents a highly organized functional gene, but these shared mistakes, apparently, we actually know now that there's important functions involved in them. And the thing is, if you look at ENCODE, this preliminary data, this biochemical evidence for function, that we're talking about here, it doesn't only exist for, the known functional pseudogenes, which, I'm sure we can go into many, but also for at least 80% of all the pseudogenes in humans. So, and even given that data on certain parts of the genetic language, the DNA language that we don't understand, it's pretty obvious that this other 20% could still be found to be functional in, say, some human tissue, or even under some physiological condition that has yet been studied thoroughly, because we're only in the infancy of our understanding of the DNA language, and many non-coding RNA genes, like these pseudogenes that I'm talking about here, are only expressed under certain conditions. And the gold standard of tests for function, gene knockouts, haven't been done on humans. So it'd be premature to say that. It'd be premature to conclude, what's a mutation and what's not.
Yes. There are many things that we thought were true about non-functional DNA that are now overturned. Okay.
Exactly right.
Yes.
Well, these, because it's kind of like, the fossil record. Evolutionists will look to the fossil record to look for our, ancestors. Kind of like these pseudogenes, right? They look at them like they're fossil sequences, but at the end of the day, we now know that they're not evolutionary leftovers at all, and a lot of them are actually necessary and required to sustain healthy life processes in the cell. And we can get into specific ones, like, for example, the beta globin pseudogene, or the apparent broken remnants of an ancient chicken gene, that are now known to be very important functional DNA elements as well. So, you know what? Junk DNA has been overturned, and the evolutionists that, the biased evolutionists that want to hold on to it and just deny what we now know about the scientific data, they're still living in the junk DNA era, and it's sad.
Yes. But you do know their rescuing device to that, right? Standing for truth. Because
Well, from what I've heard, the rescue device on a pseudogene would be, sure, maybe it was broken, but through further mutations, it led to some type of other function. But at the end of the day, actually, if you want to continue that, Jeremy, I got to get a charger for the computer. Just a second.
yes, their argument is basically that the pseudogenes do not really that evolutionary biology does not really require pseudogenes to be absolutely non-functional. Okay, this is their rescuing device after the ENCODE project. Before this, They didn't predict this. Okay. That they predict, they say that some pseudogenes will be found to have a function of some sort, but after a gene loses its original function, it's possible that its other sequences would develop new function based on the environment, based on mutations and so on, for a different function. And if that function actually becomes important to the animal, it will be maintained through natural selection. Okay, and they use several examples for this. So that's basically the rescuing device after encode. After encode. Because the junk DNA they were so sure in junk DNA. So sure. And for example, is standing for truth there? No,
Yes.
it's not.
Yeah.
Sorry. For example, I really need to quote this guy often. This guy, because he is the former head of the Human Genome Project, Dr. Francis Collins, and one of the smartest men in the world, and currently the National Institute for Health director in the United States government. I really need to quote him because who else is the best authority in DNA other than Dr. Francis Collins? Okay, who else? And he's a Christian evolutionist. Okay, in his book, I read a long time ago, he said that that junk DNA is proven finally. Evolution is true. That was we wrote this book in 2007 or 6, and I read it by 2011. Okay, and I was shocked in 2015, 360 degrees. After his book in 2007, in less than 10 years, he said the scientific community don't use the word junk DNA anymore because we were hubris. Is hubris? I think his. What does hubris mean again, guys? In English, I forgot what's the meaning. What it means? I think he said the word hubris, or we were so ignorant. Sorry, I'm not very good at English. He said that we thought we knew how to check for junk DNA. We know how to check for mutations to determine if something is a mutation or not. We thought we knew. Okay, but in 2015, he said something about hubris. We were so hubris.
Excessive pride.
Yeah,
Hubris.
yeah. I think that's it. We were a sense of pride that we know how to check for junk DNA. We know how to determine if something is functional or not. That's what he said in his book. Okay, that's what most evolutionists said in the past. But in 2015, the leading expert in DNA in the world, Dr. Francis Collins, admit that junk DNA is dead because we thought we knew how to check for junk DNA if something is a mutation or not. Okay, because so many actually most of his book cannot be used anymore today. Most parts of his book, I read it again last year. His book, I read it again. Right now, I'm reading another book.
Nice.
Most of his book cannot be applied today anymore. The pseudogenes he used cannot be applied today anymore because they've been overturned. That's how fast genetics is changing, and it proves that we really know less than 5% of DNA. And some even said we will never completely know everything about DNA.
That's great. Just like epigenetics, it's new and it's turning over those beneficial mutations quick.
Yeah, they are so hurried, so impatient, so excited to see cherry pick data as proof of evolution.
Yeah, I mean, think about all the missing links that they've classified, right? They find something in the fossil record, and they find Java man, oh, fake, and then they find Nebraska man, fake, Peking man, fake. But they put these all as statues in their museums. As soon as they find it, they find like one jaw or one tooth or one foot, and they'll construct an entire storyline out of these little bones that they find. And then they find the Orc man, fraud, and then they find Lucy. And they go, oh, this will be great. So they puzzle it all together. They found one of the bones after all those years were a baboon in the upper neck, right? And then they go, well, you know, it's proof that she's been standing. See, you can actually see the spine. But that's just lumbar lordosis. That's when something sits for a long period of time or stands. They've actually found that when they take circus monkeys and they walk them around and they force them to walk, their spines develop that because it helps them center in gravity. And when they go to zoos and they make monkeys sit in there as well, they develop the same spinal that stands straight up because they sit all the time instead of moving around. So they've actually proven that this is nothing unique at all. Matter of fact, one evolutionist by the name of Charles Oxnard, who studied Lucy, he even said that the bones of Lucy represent an animal that is not in the line of humans. It's not a missing link. He did computer multivariate analysis on the bones. These little ape-like creatures were actually found later walking upright in Sumatra today. So if you want to look at the fossil record, I mean, they have the tongue child, the Homo florensis, which was a fraud, the Harnado Kamada, the Lorting man, fraud. They have the Atherolopithecus ramadius, the Acebity, the Atherolopithecus robustus, which was just nothing but matches a gorilla, another fraud. The Heidelbergensis, I probably pronounced that right. Sorry.
Yeah, Romet. Sorry, you were still speaking. Sorry.
It's all good. I'm just going down a list. They sold
evolutionists love to confuse the public, but I would like to straighten that out. Actually, many are confused with the number of ape-man evolutionists produce. Okay, because it looks like there's so many, correct? They portray it like it's so many.
Yeah.
But the finds, more or less, okay, but the finds, you can more or less fall into only two distinct groups.
Right.
First group is Neanderthal or Homo erectus. That's the first group, and this which we can easily prove as humans, okay. And then the rest, like the famous Lucy, are the second group, which we can also conclusively prove as apes. Okay, so that's to straighten things out, so that there will be less confusion. Okay, and let's not forget, these human evolution fossils only are less than 40% bones found. Okay, the most number of bones found was Lucy, but it's even less than 40%. You do not call something evidence based on just less than 40%. It can be thrown out in court. So many bones are missing here, and as far as I recall, an expert did say that sometimes one bone alone can distinguish if this species is human or ape. So with 60% of the bones missing on every transitional human evolution transitional form, do they have a case? No, because one bone alone sometimes can distinguish between human and ape, and they don't have even 40% of the bones. Not a single transitional form, a human evolution transitional form has more than 40%. Lucy is the most, and it's even less than 40%. And you call that evidence?
Well, in a court of law, like you said, that would be thrown out, and they've reconstructed through a lot of artistic license, you know, a supposed ancestor and his wife based on, I think it was a tooth that ended up turning out to be a pig's tooth. I've even watched one of Aaron Ra's videos where he was talking about early ancestors. I think it was primate ancestors, and it was all derived on one bone too. I think it was a tooth. I mean, there's so much storytelling, there's so much creative license involved.
Yes.
That in an honest court of law, it would be thrown out. And even Ken Hovind came up with that you know, no bone found in the dirt could be used as evidence for evolution. Because in an honest court of law, it would be thrown out. And especially what we know about genetics today, to go to some bone found in the dirt expecting it to be different, long ago and far away, that's just circular based on a false assumption. And just like you said with the categories, right? You got the Lucy, the Australopithecines, and then you've got the Neanderthal, Homo erectus. They can be safely categorized within, you know, apes or monkeys and humans. And everything we know, I mean, we talk a lot about genomic degeneration, genetic entropy. If you want to look at these apparent human ancestors, I mean, Neanderthal, for example, had a very high genetic load, and they were 40% less fit than modern humans. You know, they experienced severe genetic degeneration, probably due to, no, it was due to inbreeding, because that would reveal the hidden reservoir of genetic mistakes. So that's consistent with genetic entropy. These hobbits, the Homo floresiensis, you know, they were they also suffered from genetic entropy, you know, reductive evolution. They had the reduced body size, reduced brain volume, and other numerous pathologies. Homo naledi, erectus, evidence there that they were suffering from reductive evolution as well. And what would we expect after the Tower of Babel? A lot of these subgroups of humans, of human populations, they would have migrated, and some, let's say the Neanderthals, for example, would have been isolated. They would have been at risk for inbreeding, and then they would have suffered from a faster case of genetic entropy. What these early human populations, these subgroups after Babel experienced, you know, this reductive evolution, that's a sneak preview as to where we're heading. You know, they were inbred, they had small populations, so they experienced it quicker, this reductive evolution, but that's just a sneak preview. So I think what I'm trying to say is it all just correlates very consistently under a biblical based model. They don't have any missing links. You know, the whole chain is missing, and there's a lot of creative license involved. And just like Jeremy said, it would be thrown out of an honest court of law. So they really have nothing to stand on.
Yes, their favorite is Lucy, correct? Do you agree, Romat, that their favorite is Lucy?
Yeah, still is, because they found
Yeah.
other Australopithecus africanus by now, so they still love the Lucy ones for sure.
Yes. Of course, I memorized this. Lucy, as I recall, okay, the Lucy fossil, its brain size, for example, is only 1/3 the size of the brain from ours. Do you guys get it? Its brain size is only 1/3 compared to ours. Okay?
Yeah, it's a lot smaller than ours.
Yes, that indicates it's a chimp. And another one, Lucy is only 3 feet tall, as we know, and that is also indicative of chimp, correct? 3 feet tall, and then we estimate it's only 65 pounds. Chimps are also 65. Lucy is only 65 pounds. Another indication it's a chimp, and its teeth. Not teeth. Molar. Molars are teeth. Sorry. It has big, giant molars like monkeys. Okay, another evidence it's chimp. How many do we have? 3 to 4. And its hip bone is also very chimp-like. And also one more thing, they also found human footprints with Lucy. Okay, so how many do we have? 5 to 6, 7 evidence that it's a chimp. And we did it. They did it. Evolutionists gave the data, not us. They compared it to modern chimps, and they are just so much alike.
Well, with all that amount of evidence in an honest court of law, just like you said, it would be thrown out. You know,
plus
there is
only
no
less than
evidence.
40%. Okay, like I said, less than 40% of the bones were found. Plus these data that indicate it's not a human evolution, it's just a chimp. This is what you call a near slam dunk case.
Well, that's exactly right. And when you think about the variety of humans today, I mean, you've got, if you look at different skulls of different human groups today, you could take those and line them up and because there's so much storytelling and creative license involved in formulating, this so-called progression from an ape-like ancestor to humans, there's so much variation in humans and so much variation in apes or in monkeys, that these bones that they find in the dirt, I mean, they can kind of, based on creative license, line it up any way they want. When in fact, there's variations that exist today that you could probably do the exact same thing with. Look at all the domestic dog breeds. You could take all their different skulls that look very much different than each other and line them up any way that you want, but yet they all live today. So just like you said, it all comes down to the fact that in an honest court of law, it would be thrown out in a second.
Yes, but standing for truth, do you know that some museums actually admit that they cannot line up these transitional forms? Do you know that? Do you know that some evolutionary top level museums cannot even line them up in their own museum, and they did confess that they are not sure about this. Okay, do you know about that? Standing for truth.
A little bit. Did you want to expand on it?
Yeah, for example, in the British Museum of Natural History, well, this is one of the best museum in the world. Someone I know went there, forgot when. He took pictures, and there is a chart. He told me that there is a chart over there in the British Museum of Natural History. Okay. What the hell did he say again? Yeah. In the human evolution portion of the museum, there are only two groups. Okay, two groups over there. One identified as human, and the other as apes. Okay, they are separated. Okay, with nothing bridging them. Okay, nothing bridging them. And we have to ask why. If they're so sure of evolution, why didn't they portray them bridging together? And it's simple, the answer, because they found it impossible to show a clear order of progression from apes to human. So they separated it. Only apes here, okay, the ape group, and then the human over here. Okay, nothing bridging them. They separated it. No human evolution. And my friend also told me that he read something was written about it. I don't know, forgot. Sorry, but it was an admission that that admit they cannot. Scientists cannot line them up because there is huge dispute among which really is ape, human, and transitional like that. So they just separated it. Anybody can check this out if you go to the British Museum of Natural History. There are only two groups. Okay, two groups, humans and ape. That's it in the human evolution part. In other museums, you would see an ape transitioning slowly into humans. So they're only one group, but in this museum, there are only two groups. So not all evolutionary museums are in unison. I'm not sure if unison is the correct English, but they don't agree with each other also. That is why the things that creationists are saying about transitional forms are not quote mine or are not misrepresentation of data, because evolutionists themselves are disputing with each other on which really is an ape or a human like that.
Yeah, good point.
You can do it real quick as well. You can figure out which one's an ape and which one is a human really quick, and it's very easy too, because we have more of this than we have fossils. Well, it is a fossil, but it's their crap. They crap all over the ground, and they can test it. It's called Cooper-Lytic investigation, and it's fossilized fecal matter. And what they found when they look at like Paranthropus bosei or Australopithecus, and they find that most of their diet consisted of something called tiger nuts, 80% and more. Matter of fact, the paleo diet loves tiger nuts because they say that our ancient ancestors in the paleo times ate these things. Well, guess what? Try to go out, buy a bag of them. I dare anybody listening right now, if you think you're related to these suckers, go buy a bag. They're about 4 to 8 ounces and eat half of it. I dare you. Watch what happens. You will turn inside out. It's like eating a pure laxative. They're so high in oligosaccharides that you want to die. You can probably eat like a little handful, but you can't live on them. And that's their main caloric basis. Tiger nuts? No way. And when they test Cro-Magnon and Solo Man and Neanderthal, none of them had tiger nuts in their diet because it's ridiculous. You can't eat very many of them. They have an entirely different digestion tract than we do.
Wow, that's really interesting. I never knew. Just another fatal blow to their so-called human ape ancestry found in the fossil record. Now they want to go to the fossil record.
Another example standing for truth is the Homo erectus. Another example of evolutionists fighting with each other. Some evolutionists wanted to put Homo erectus as a transitional form, and some evolutionists wanted to put Homo erectus as in the category of modern humans. One evidence that they found out, which again was predicted by creationists, okay, is that Homo erectus interbred with the modern humans. Okay, they interbred with modern humans. In other words, the entire Homo erectus group were just humans.
Exactly, just like the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, I think it's called. Because if, as we're saying, you know, these were just subgroups, say after the Babel dispersion, where many of these different groups experienced, you know, inbred related reductive evolution, then that's what we would expect, that they would yeah, obviously they lived amongst themselves. And just like you said, there's a lot of conflict and debate amongst the evolutionists themselves, the evolutionary community. So what we're saying, what the creationists are saying in regards to transitional forms is true. It's not quote mining. It's not misrepresentations. It's fact. Actually, I wanted to ask you, Matt, you mentioned something about Lucy, that there's chimp-like creatures possibly even living today. Is that what you said?
Yeah. One of the people, the Charles Oxnard, actually found that these little ape-like creatures that stand upright, they live in Sumatra today, unevolved completely, same height, same weight.
More stasis as usual.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a obvious fact in the fossil record that that of course evolutionists have developed rescuing device for. Okay, we see billions of fossils in the fossil record, correct? So if there are billions of fossils in the fossil record, where are the billions of transitional forms that we should be finding now, all over again? Where are they? Of course, evolutionists have developed rescuing device, so billions of fossils in the fossil record. We should also find billions of transitional forms. Where are they? We only found less than, Romat, correct me if I'm wrong, less than 10,000 or just 1,000, and all of them, nearly all of them are in dispute, which could also be interpreted as variations of the created kinds. And where are the dinosaur transitional forms? One more thing. Right?
Well, exactly. They want to go to, well, they want to cherry pick certain progressions, but then so many others, there's literally, there's nothing. There's no progression at all. There's no links. There's no chain. And with our model of pre-existing heterozygosity and created genetic diversity, we'd expect variation among the created kinds, say apes, monkeys. And the fact that you can just categorize every single one of these, say, fossils, indicates a biblical creation model. And in regards to like what you just said, like where's all the billions of fossils of all these ancestors? You know, where's
be billions, billions.
Exactly, because in our model, what we see is low genetic diversity amongst all people groups, which is obviously consistent with Adam and Eve, you know, two ancestors. But even with the flood bottleneck, everything we see in the fossil record, the limited fossils in general, makes sense under our model. But just like you said, yeah, where's the billions of fossils? They're absent.
Yes,
And
one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been following this creation evolution debate almost all my life, ever since I was still in school, as a former atheist, former theistic evolutionist, now as a YEC. I've always been fascinated with Stephen Jay Gould. He is one of the most honest evolutionists I've ever seen. Okay? During the 1980s and during the 90s, he frequently said that there are no transitional forms or huge lack of transitional forms. That is why they and some of his friends suggested I think you already know this, suggested a rapid evolution or punctuated equilibrium. Because it's not only him who admit this. There are other evolutionists who admit it. These are not quote mine because when several people are saying the same thing, they become evidence. Okay?
Yeah.
And the court would also prefer more than one eyewitness to a murder scene or something. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
80s and 90s, they admit, leading evolutionists admit there were no transitional forms. Niles Eldridge admitted it, Stephen Jay Gould, and more. Okay, they suggested rapid evolution and punctuated equilibrium. Then this is also what I noticed. When Stephen Jay Gould and those what I might still consider honest evolutionists, his generation, the old atheism is more honest than the new atheism. The new atheism today is complete and total garbage. Complete and total garbage. So when Stephen and Jay Gould and his honest evolutionists pass away, the new atheism resurrected, okay? The new atheism resurrected many of the debunked transitional forms that Stephen Jay Gould and evolutionists have debunked and discredited his punctuated equilibrium idea. That this new atheism went back to the slow and gradual evolution. You guys get it?
Oh yeah, they claim themselves.
It's like in the 80s and 90s, there were no transitional forms. Stephen Jay Gould and the rest admit. But suddenly in the 2000s, we have a lot of transitional forms. Huh.
Yeah,
Magic.
and today they have the same problem. They call it the Cambrian explosion. They know that life just popped up, and boom, there it is, all unevolved, just from out of nowhere. The Cambrian explosion happened, and there's life. They know it, but they forget about it when they want to prove their side, their arguments. It's funny, too, because if you say about the fossil record, they get pissed. They immediately start going, what? That doesn't have anything to do with evolution. Evolution's only a change in allele frequency. Why are you bringing up the fossil record? That's, you know, and then the second you go, what's your best evidence for evolution? They go, the fossil record. Get out of here.
Those evolutionists who say the best evidence is in the fossil record are extremely uninformed, extremely weak evolutionists, because the evidence, like we've been saying all along, for best evidence for evolution is not in the fossil record. No. The fossil record is like a book. You don't judge a book by its cover. It's the DNA. The best evidence is over there. So it's clear to see most evolutionists are not informed about their own theory.
That's a very good point.
We know more about evolution than these evolutionists.
Isn't that funny? All these evolutionists we've been debating, we know more about their best evidence than they do, and we go on the offense. We right away attack junk DNA, pseudogenes, chromosomal 2 fusion, you know, endogenous retroviruses, these specific genetic markers that they don't even know about. I mean, how many times did you have to ask Sam the scientist, who apparently they really look up to, for
Yes.
one specific genetic marker, and he couldn't give you one? He's like, oh, well, I can't just name 1,000 right here at the top of my head. You're like, just name me one. So it's funny that they, they'll say things like phylogenetic systematics, and yet they don't even really know how these phylogenetic trees are built. They can't name the specific genetic marker. They don't even understand their nested hierarchies. So
Yes.
the ones, like you said, that go to the fossil record, they're obviously ill-informed, like you said. They're ignorant of the data. And then the ones that you'd think are more informed, they don't even understand their best evidence. And we go on the offense and we destroy it. And even in regards to this, we've been going for a while. We could get into so much stuff. I mean, I wanted to get into incomplete lineage sorting, and there's just so much to debunk ape human ancestry. But I think we've done a good job now. I did want to give it over to Matt for a second, because we've conclusively proven here that, listen, man is not related to apes. Man is not related to anything else. Man is made in the image of God. That's what empirical scientific data says, and that's what the Bible says as well. But if you watched our Phylogeny Challenge Debunk series, the 3-part, yeah.
Let you finish first. I have a very good point.
Yeah, no problem. I was just going to say that obviously our goal today was to prove that, man is a separate created kind made in the image of God. But we have some other, for example, the dire wolf that I wanted Matt to get into briefly. But before we get into that, Matt can end it on some other created kinds, just to satisfy your R and Raws of the world. But I'll give it to you first, Jeremy, to make your point. Go ahead, brother.
One more thing. If evolution, if evolution is true, okay. Let me start it off with organ donors or organ donors. Do you guys understand how organ donorships works? Organ donor. It's the English of it. Is it correct? Donor, right? Correct, donor.
Yeah.
You donate your body part to someone else.
Correct.
Yes. Usually, in all cases, correct me if I'm wrong. You can the only organ that can match a particular person is someone close to him or her. Correct.
Or blood type, depending on the organ. You can remove the
organ itself. The organ itself.
Organs
the main organ itself.
Yeah.
Okay. If evolution were true, our genetics would have been so different and divergent, correct? That that people groups around the world should not and will not be able to donate their organ to someone else very far from their family lineage, correct, Romat?
Correct.
Yes. And but there are cases today where organs, for example, someone from Africa, their organs can be transplanted with somebody from the United States. Yeah, I forgot the example of this. Forgot the data with this. Roma, do you know about this?
Yeah, there's groups of people around the world on almost every island as well. There's in Japan and in China. There's Caucasian groups of people that probably migrated there since the flood, and their genetics match very similar, very, very similar. And so,
so if evolution were true, with the accumulation of large genetic differences and so on, the capability for organs being transplanted from different people groups, not closely related at all, should also not be possible, correct, if evolution is true. Because, did you guys get my point? The fact that we can transplant organ from one human to another means that evolution isn't true. Do you guys get it? I don't know how, I wish I could speak in Chinese here. I don't know how to say this to explain this very well. Maybe next time. Sorry, guys.
No, you're doing all right. That's why they're working on making skin genetically, like in a machine, right? So it's fake, so that you can, because if you skin graft from somebody and put it on somebody else, it might not take, your body might not take it. Just like on a hair transplant, you can't take hair from your head and put it in mine and have it take. It has to be your own hair. So there's different things, but cats are all very genetically similar. Cats are so identical that you can actually take a lion or a cheetah or a jaguar or a panther. You can graft their hair and put it on your house cat and it will take. That's how genetically similar they all still are. Humans are very similar, except for we've got different blood types, so it doesn't really work so well with us when it comes to organs. Sometimes they get rejected, other times they get taken. So, you know, there's that as well. With dogs, they've genetically messed them up so much from wolves that they're so messed up they can't do that. That same thing with fur and hair. They can't put it on a Chihuahua and have it take. They're all messed up.
I think my point was for the African guy who needs an organ transplant, got his organ, for example, from somebody from Europe. And since the evolutionary idea that these guys have diverged so far in the human line or something, that they should not match. His organ should not be compatible with somebody from Europe. Correct? This is someone from Africa. And let's not forget, Africans, according to evolution, were the first to evolve. Okay, so Africans will be the farthest in the line, and the Europeans, according to some evolutionists, are the most evolved. Okay, so how could somebody much less evolved, get an organ from somebody that is very much evolved already? Okay, you can have organ transplants between you and your family members, close family members. But how can you have an organ transplant with somebody which is very far from your line, especially Africans and Europeans? Okay, I think that's the point I was trying to make. Yeah. So did you guys understand? So the fact that we see some Africans being able to get an organ from Europeans is proof that human evolution isn't true.
Yeah, they would have.
They're so far. They're so far, right?
Right.
I wish I could expound this better than how I did it. You know.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. You're basically saying that, look, if humans were 135,000 years ago, that's where they're divulging from Africa, then it's pretty apparent that the dissimilarity of human beings throughout that time, no matches would happen. People would not be able to transfer organs to one another from that time.
You explained it very well in just one sentence. My English is really very weak. I wish you guys can understand Chinese or Tagalog or Filipino, my country's language, or Mandarin. I can also speak Mandarin.
Wow, you should do videos for people there as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. No, I would say, Jeremy, as always, you explain things very clear. So we've got no problem with your explanations. And just to anybody who's in the audience, you know, we've been going at this for over an hour. If you want to look back on it, we've talked about chromosome 2 fusion myth, the chimp Y chromosome fatal blow, human orphan genes, pseudogenes, gene function differences, and then obviously genomics data and the supposed similarity myth. But I think it would be, so obviously we've demonstrated, our goal has been to demonstrate the uniqueness of humans as a separate created kind made in the image of God versus being related to ape ancestry. Matt, if you wanted to end it, brother, with a few with a little bit on some other created kinds that were presented in the Phylogeny Challenge Debunked series. Go ahead, brother.
Sure, we can wrap it up in a couple different ways. That's a good one as well, because always people say, well, what animals were on the ark? What was the original created kinds? Think about it like this, people. How about honeybees, okay? How do flowers function with pollen transfer without bees? We know that there's a chance that wind and beetles can do some of it, but can they do all of it? Of course not, because we know recently that Japan has lost their bees, right? This is a disaster for them because they actually have to go around with Q-tips now and pollinate by hand all their flowers. What a disaster. So of course the symbiotic relationship between honeybees and flowers is mutual. It's mutual. It has to exist or else you don't get them. Even Einstein said when bees die, humans are about 4 years behind them in dying. So how do you, what came first, flowers or bees? It's pretty apparent they both came at the same time. How about the fig tree or the fig wasp? Which came first? The fig tree can't live without the fig wasp, and the fig wasp doesn't exist without the fig tree. What about the acacia tree and the Phrygianus ants? Think about that. The acacia tree can't live without the ants, and the ants don't live without the tree. These symbiotic relationships are a very good indication to me that they were created at exactly the same time. We know that all dogs today come from the Ambrister wolf or the dire wolf. These two animals, these two wolves created every dog that you see today. These were the original created kind. And we know that elephants are all related as well. They go back, even the mastodon goes back to the original elephant. And it's called it's Gomphother's. I cannot even pronounce it. You can Google it. We have the short-faced bear. We know all bears came from this bear. The polar bear, the black bear, the brown bear, all the bears came from this single bear. It's the original heirloom bear, and it's far superior, by the way. Everything you guys are seeing today is a genetic weak, inferior, or total stasis. That's all you see, weakness or stasis. Nothing is better than it was in the past. Check out the entire fossil record. Nothing. No dog we've ever created would stand a chance against a dire wolf. Not in a million years, not any function. So, you know, that's just there's a few examples for you guys. I can give you more next time, but the argument people do for common ancestry that makes me mad, I'll break it down real quick for you. It's that, well, aren't you a eukaryote? That's just so irritating. Okay, think of it like a ladder. A eukaryote is the very bottom rung of the ladder. That's the only thing that like a pine tree and a shark and a human have in common. So they say, well, aren't you a eukaryote? That's proof you're related to a pine tree. No, it's not. Not at all. Are you a shark? Of course not. Of course you're not a shark. But is a shark a eukaryote? Sure. So, oh my God, we're twins with sharks now, are we? Of course not. They divulge. Matter of fact, to even get past the shark, you would have to skip the second rung because they don't even contain the biological elements that are on that second rung for it to be true. So they're called chordates, right? So how do you get them? Well, you got to skip that rung, and you got to just skip. And they go, well, they diverge into a different tree probably. They just have rescuing devices because all they're correlating is the eukaryote problem that they have. That's the only thing that they have. So they just use that as circular reasoning to go back and say, see, it's just proof. You're a eukaryote, a pine tree is a eukaryote, a shark is a eukaryote, and you are a eukaryote. Therefore, it's proof. Proof of what? That eukaryotes exist? Sure, that's where it is. But they have to skip the other rungs to make that. That's why they don't bring those up. That's why their trees are so bad. So, what is the homologous structure between you and a shark? There isn't one. How about a pine tree and a shark? A tree consumes by photosynthesis, and a shark's a carnivore, and a human's a frugivore. They have nothing in common except for they're eukaryotes. So therefore, somehow that makes logical sense to them. Like I said, they just skip the entire ladder and hang on to the bottom rung, and that makes sense to them. The illogical reasoning is fallacious to me. It's like saying all men are bad. Gandhi was a man, therefore Gandhi's bad. It's ridiculous. They're just using a circular argument to.
Well, I mean, planets and whales must be related. They're both affected by gravity, and bananas and whales must be related too. They're both yellow except for the elephant.
Yeah, they're related.
Ridiculous.
Atoms.
Yeah. Looks like we're going for woven here.
Thought we'd end it with a couple of his jokes. You know what? That's a perfect way to end it there, Matt, because you know what? I'm so sick of that argument. I think ever since the R and Rock Ken Hovind debate, they actually think that's a good argument. That, yeah, you know, pine trees and elephants are related because, well, they're both eukaryotes, and you just dismantled that right there. And I'm sure that's not going to stop them from, you know, still using that argument, but
Aaron Rodgers did that on the debate with Nephilim Free. He used that same argument, and he always resorts to taxonomy. It's so ridiculous because if you were to standing next to that obese bastard at the zoo, and you were like, "Look at that monkey," he would be like, "Oh, that's an ape." But if you were to point to the human and go, "Look at the human," he'd be like, "Well, that's an ape." That's how illogical he is. It's like,
right.
They're apes. What are you talking about? You just got offended that I called the monkey an ape. See, taxonomy is just a riddle to their own mind. They can't even make sense of it to themselves.
Well, they get mad if you say, "Oh, we came from monkeys," or if, but he'll even say that we're all eukaryotes, we're all apes, we're all. It's all circular, just like you said, really.
Right. Yeah. That's all they've got. They've got these ridiculous arguments that are just nothing to break apart, because once you skim past the surface, they really have nothing. That's why I like telling people it's just their theory. And I use the vernacular usage of that word because we talk to the general public, meaning it's a pathetic theory that they have. Not a scientific one. It's a pathetic theory.
Well, in your last video has been a real hit. People are loving it. You brought up some really good points. Anyone who's listening who hasn't watched it yet, it's called Raw Matt Debunks Bacteria to Biologist Evolution. There were a few ignorant comments in there. I'm not sure if you can remember any of them at the top of your head. Did you want to say a few things about it, or?
Oh, yeah. One of them was the guy said, well, there's other possibilities if evolution isn't true. I said, yeah, special creation. That's the only one. Please give me an example of another theory that doesn't involve evolution. So far, we have life from volcanoes. But
aliens.
Yeah, we have aliens, life from volcanoes, molecular theory meets clay, pigs mated with monkeys. We have life from ocean. We have abiogenesis, panspermia, life under ice. They all deal with evolution. Every single one of them has an evolutionary theory behind them. I said, if you know of another one, please tell me that if it doesn't involve evolution. They all do. So that was a comment that I was going to say. Hey, what are you talking about? What other alternative is there for these people if there's not evolution? You have creation or you have evolution. There's no other option. So now that evolution is going down the toilet, what other options do these people have? That's why they need it to be true. They don't care if it's true. They just want it to be really, really bad.
Well, especially when you use, like for me, I'll use, genetic entropy, genomic degradation based on the accumulation of, deleterious mutations. And that's a double whammy because that's exactly what we would predict given a literal interpretation of Genesis and the fall, death, decay. But it also destroys pond scum to people evolution, because if we're going down, not up, you're not going to get your fish to fisherman evolution. There's no new novel information. All we see is degradation and decay of the genome. So they'll say, oh, where's your model? Sure, you disproved evolution, but where's your model? It's like, there it is. Special creation is the alternative. And a lot of the evidence we're using to destroy their pet theory confirms a biblical-based model. It's a double whammy, like I've said.
Yeah, they have nothing. They have a hard time explaining the most logical concept of all. Why did we lose everything? How is this beneficial? Okay, beneficial mutations are what we evolved from, right? What's beneficial about us getting skin cancer, sunburned when we stand in the sun? What's beneficial about not being able to eat almost everything that we see around us that grows on trees? What's beneficial about dying from cancer? Because apes don't. They have high methylation. They don't die from AIDS and HIV, even if they carry it. They don't get They don't get infections because their immune system's extremely strong. They can walk barefoot. We have trouble doing that because we can get parasites or infection. I mean, we can go down the list. They can fall out of a tree and be fine. We'll get beat up. You can go online and you can watch primates attack lions in Africa by themselves, not in hordes, and they do just fine. The lions run. What good luck trying that as a human being. That wouldn't fare too good. Just do the general logic comparison on how you would fare compared to an ape in anything. I have in our video, there's a sumo wrestler doing with a arm, not arm wrestling, but rope pull against a little tiny chimp, and the chimp wins. You know, we lost every beneficial physiological adaptation, every one, so we can be human. What in the world kind of system that made, right? I mean, there should be logic in their theory, and it's when every time they come out with a new scientific fact, they hope that you drop logic on the floor.
It's honestly, yeah, no, it's unbelievable. I think we've had a good stream here. If you had any last words, Jeremy, that you wanted to say, brother, before we end it, you can go ahead.
But we guys know the number one accusation of evolutionists against creationists is, right, that they say that the creationists cannot make testable and falsifiable predictions. That is their
yeah.
Then why do creationists hold more Nobel Prizes?
Yeah. Most evolutionists, especially atheist evolutionists, are not only liars, but they are also biased. They claim creation isn't science because it doesn't make testable and falsifiable predictions, like I said. Because as we know, science is about making testable and falsifiable predictions. In fact, okay, creation science offers lots and lots of testable and falsifiable predictions. The accusation from evolutionists was based on the fact they ignore creationist literature, so they don't see our predictions. Okay? After they ignore our literature, they even have the balls. Wait, is that profanity, balls? No, guts. Sorry, I should have used the word guts. Have the guts. Where was I? They even have, after they ignore our literature, they even have the guts of course, they will have the guts. They don't have a conscience. Atheists are like Stalin and Hitler. No conscience. Okay? Of course, they can lie. They will lie. And so after ignoring our literature, they have the balls, the guts to lie and claim we don't make testable and falsifiable prediction. That is based on what? Based on the fact they don't read our literature, so they don't see our testable and falsifiable predictions. Okay? Yeah, exactly. So how do you refute something you know nothing about?
Exactly.
Extremely biased and great deceivers or liars. Okay? And we have, wow, in the catastrophic plate tectonics model alone of the flood, we have more than 5 testable predictions. In Dr. Jameson's book, more than 10. A lot more. My goodness, I can go on forever with these testable predictions. We can do it next time in the next video or something.
I was just going to say, we could probably go on about another, actually, you know what? Episode, well, we're going to be doing a book review on episode 4, but a separate issue in episode 4, we could get into testable and falsifiable predictions. And it's funny because in my last debate with Patient Beard, I mean, the guy is just so science illiterate. I don't know what he was expecting. He said, how can you falsify, biblical creation? And I talked about created heterozygosity hypothesis. I talked about created functional DNA differences, and we would predict that the vast majority of our DNA code is functional to some extent. I referred him to ENCODE and how they revealed that over 80% of the non-coding areas are transcribed into RNA, suggesting function, preliminary data. If our genome is, if the majority of it is non-functional junk, evolutionary leftovers, that would falsify at least that hypothesis. And at the end, he just didn't understand it. He just said, that's not, they don't read our literature, and their bias reeks. And to be honest with you, like you said, in all our different models, CPT, for example, Dr. Jensen has presented some amazing testable predictions in regards to the created heterozygosity and the mitochondrial DNA haplogroups. Mutation rates in the Khoisan peoples. There's a prediction there. So at the end of the day, all they're going to do is scoff, but can they make testable predictions? That's the gold standard of science. So you nailed it right on the head there, Jeremy.
Yep. That patient bird, how dare he debate the great standing for truth? How dare he?
Well, thank you. Anyways, guys, it's been fun. We'll do episode 4 soon. This one was great, actually. I think we presented some great evidence. We accomplished what we needed to. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, everybody who's out there listening. And thanks to the atheists, because you know what? Without those atheistic evolutionists, all of this success would not have been possible without you guys. So Jeremy and Ramat and I really want to thank them.
Lastly, very last, standing for truth. Like Ramat said, and of course I agree. I've seen the articles, the studies, that the atheists are the saddest people on earth.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in your country right now, you guys are in the Western Hemisphere, correct? I'm in Asia, so it's afternoon here.
Yeah.
These atheist thinking Stalins and Hitler apes are hanging around this video because they're sad. They can't sleep. They're in depression. They're so sad. I mean, they're so sad that they first of all, I don't care if they're sad. Okay, honestly, I want them to be gone from this earth. I don't care if they're sad. I mean, if they have I don't think most of them have a social life. They're alone.
That's why
you guys have mercy on them, but they won't get any mercy from me. I hate them. I hate them to the bone. They're sad people. That's why they're hanging with you, standing for truth.
And you'd think after all the evidence, we provided today, that they'd look at it and be like, wow, that's awesome. You know what? We're not related to some monkey. We're actually, made in the image of God. And there's better things to look forward to. But no. Anything but God. Anything but the God of the Bible. They'd rather hate and scoff. And just like the Bible says, they're willingly ignorant. And at the end of the day, every knee shall bow.
Standing for truth. I'm very sorry, but I have a super last thing to say. I got it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm very sorry. All right. This is what I noticed. If you hurt the atheist, okay, if you hurt those non sequitur atheists, those Freedom from Religion Foundation atheists, if you exhibit an attitude that is aggressive, they will say, "Where is your Christian love?" They will ask, "Where is your Christian love?" So, as you can see, this is what I noticed. They know Christians have love in them, are good people. They know it, yet they attack Christians.
Yeah, they try to trigger you. They try to make you angry by calling you names.
Yet they attack Christians.
Yeah.
You attack good people. They attack good people. They attack good people. See? They are really bad, evil. Stalins and Hitlers. They know Christians are good, and they attack Christians still. Because when you attack them, they say, "Where is your Christian love?" So they know Christians are good. They know Christians have love, yet they attack good people. That means they are super evil.
Yeah, they're so mad. They got so much hate in them. That's why they hate themselves, so they blame God, and then they hate the people that are associated with God. So they attack us because they can't attack God. So the next best thing is people that are trying to help others online, right? So
yeah, sorry about that. Sorry.
Never be sorry. You're a beast.
Jeremy, you're the new evolutionist worst enemy, worst nightmare.
I don't think so. I think it's you.
You know what? This is a good way to end it. The evolutionist worst nightmare is Team Young Earth Creation. So we are going to end the broadcast tonight. I think we ended it on a very good note. Guys, stay tuned for episode 4. We're going to make sure this is the longest running series, maybe even longer running than The Simpsons, guys. So get ready. Lots of fun to look forward to. Standing for Truth.